On this special edition of the ECU Update, I sit down with ECU Chancellor Steve Ballard to discuss the state of North Carolina's economy and how it's affected budget cuts on our campus. This ECU Update starts now. Hello everybody, I'm Kyle Walker and thanks for joining us for this special edition of the ECU Update. Well, we're well into the new fiscal year and many, if not all of us, have heard about these massive budget cuts happening all throughout the state. Particularly here at ECU, there's been talk of having larger class sizes and less professors, not to mention the tuition rising over the past couple of years. After talking with several students across campus, Campus 31 Television has come to the conclusion that many students are just not aware of what really has and hasn't been cut. So I sat down one-on-one with Chancellor Steve Ballard to figure out the ins and outs of the cutbacks. So a lot's obviously changed since July 1st. And I'm just wondering what are the biggest changes for ECU?
Yeah, well, it starts with losing $49 million of our base budget. So think of the ECU budget more or less in round dollars here. We spend about $750 million a year. And about $250 million of that comes from the state. So only 1/3 are state appropriations. Now most of the rest of it, not all of it, is dedicated for specific purposes. In other words, people pay football tickets, we make a little profit on that, but that stays in athletics. We get federal aid from the federal government and that goes to students. Students pay for housing money and we save a little bit of that so that we can repair and renovate the housing stock that we have. So we don't take money from housing to pay for undergraduate education, we don't take money from the football stadium to pay for undergraduate, so on. So 2/3 of our budget really is dedicated to housing and dining and athletics and all those other auxiliaries, really, or the medical faculty, the medical practice plan over in the Brody School. But 1/3 of our budget pays for what most people think of when they think of ECU, and that's our undergraduate programs across 10 colleges and including our libraries. So now we lost $49 million out of about $300 million, getting it back to $250 million. That's a huge cut. So now the worst, so there are a lot of impacts everywhere in the university. You can't go anywhere and not see them. But the worst are any that affect the students. And those 200 faculty positions affect the students the most. You've probably felt them, almost all students have. The classes are bigger. Some classes aren't being offered as frequently. Maybe a class used to be offered once every 2 semesters, now once every 4 semesters. The services like Pirate Tutoring Center and counseling and all those things that really help a student be successful outside of the classroom, a lot of cutbacks in those. So the entire university has had to find ways for doing the same or more because our enrollment's been growing with less resources.
That's very interesting. So I guess what you're saying is ECU has, in a way, saved itself from being even worse off. With, you said there's 200 positions.
Right, just faculty positions.
Yeah, they weren't actual positions, they were positions that maybe were to be filled eventually.
Vacancies, yeah, positions we were holding really in an account. We're actually hoping that this year will be stable, the coming year, in other words, the next legislative session. We can't guarantee that, but the state of North Carolina has a biennial budget, so they try to pass a 2-year budget all in 1 year, which they did last June. And so the second year is always iffy, it's always questionable. But if it holds in terms of what they passed last June, the university system is not quite held harmless, but it's projected to be about even. In other words, no more major cuts to the university system.
You think it's going to get any worse before it gets better, I guess?
Well, it's affected by so many things, I almost hate to predict it. I mean, the economy of Greece, what Italy does, what Germany does, what the Euro does, what China does, all those things have an effect on our economy. There's not much consumer confidence in our economy, which is really hurting us. And the banks aren't lending much money, so the housing industry is not starting up. So we've really got an economy that's starting to perform better, but the investments aren't going up, and so the jobs aren't going up. So we're almost in a holding pattern right now, and nothing's literally nothing's changed for almost 6 months in all the economic indicators. My hope is that there's enough positives that we'll see, it won't be anything like that, but we're going to start to see a gradual increase in the number of jobs and therefore the state revenues. But we're in a global economy, and if the global economy goes south, we'll be affected. And then, unfortunately, I don't think there's any way to sugarcoat it, the students will have to pay a higher percentage of the cost of their education. North Carolina has been a pretty good deal for higher education. It's been pretty affordable historically, but as the state cost of as the state subsidy for education goes down, it's almost a one-to-one that as the state goes down, the student amount is going to have to go up, and we're taking a careful look at what our students can afford, what they can pay without really hurting their chances to graduate and all those things. And we'll probably have a recommendation on that to our board on about the 1st of December.
Students see things like there's a new Croatan, and I think that's just one of those topics that a lot of students don't understand.
Yeah, to them it seems like all one pot of money, and why can't they take some from here to go over there? But by law, those fees have to be used for the purpose that we charge them. But we're having more and more conversations with student government and student groups and so on about what students feel like they want to pay for. You know, in the past, students would pretty much, for most of my time here, students pretty much, agreed to the new fee increases. Well, those days I think are over. Students are going to be much more careful about saying we want to pay more for any particular service. They're going to be more careful about it. We're, this North Carolina Constitution makes higher education as free as practicable, and the state has been very good at that. We're actually a national model. I think we're the best state in the union on making really good education affordable, but that doesn't mean it won't cost more in the future. It'll be a little less affordable, but still generally affordable compared to other states.
If you have any story ideas for us, feel free to send us an email at campus31@ecu.edu. That's going to do it for this special edition of the ECU Update. I'm Kyle Walker, and we'll see you back here next time.